welcome back to Mach 1 Mindset. Today we're diving into AP European History 1.3, the Northern Renaissance. Now before we get started, please make sure you like, subscribe, and of course comment down below if you have any questions. Let's get into it. Today we're going to examine the Northern Renaissance, how it differed from the Italian Renaissance, and why it played a critical role in religious reform in the development of modern Europe. The Northern Renaissance began in the late 15th century, several decades after the Italian Renaissance was well underway. It spread across Northern Europe, particularly in regions such as Germany, France, England, the Netherlands, and present-day Belgium. While the Renaissance ideas took longer to reach the north once they arrived, they spread far more quickly than they had in Italy. The key reason for this rapid spread was the printing press. Invented by Johannes Gutenberg around 1450, the printing press revolutionized the way information circulated. Books could now be produced quickly, cheaply, and in very large numbers. This allowed Renaissance ideas to reach scholars, clergy, merchants, and even the common people. In Northern Europe, the printing press became especially important for spreading religious texts and criticism of the Catholic Church. Although Northern Europeans adopted many Renaissance ideas, they interpreted them differently from Italians. While the Italian Renaissance emphasized secularism, classical art, and individual achievement, the Northern Renaissance placed a much stronger emphasis on religion. This led to the development of Christian humanism. Christian humanism combined classical learning with Christian values. Northern humanists believed that studying ancient texts and scripture could lead to a moral improvement and religious reform. They did not seek to reject Christianity. Instead, they wanted to reform the church from within and return it to the original teachings of Christ. The most influential Christian humanist was Erasmus of Rotterdam. Erasmus was a Dutch scholar, often called the Prince of Humanism. He criticized corruption, greed, and abuse of power within the Catholic Church, particularly among the clergy. However, he remained a devout Catholic and did not support breaking away from the Church. One of his most important contributions was the new Greek and Latin edition of the New Testament. This work encouraged scholars to study Scripture in its original language rather than relying solely on church interpretations. Christian humanism had a profound impact on Northern Europe. As more people read the Bible for themselves, they began to notice differences between biblical teachings and church practices. This weakened the church's authority and encouraged individuals to think critically about religion. The emphasis on individual interpretation of Scripture directly challenged the church's control over religious knowledge. The Northern Renaissance was also shaped by cultural diversity of the region. Northern Europe consisted of many different kingdoms, languages, and traditions. This diversity allowed for a wide range of ideas to mix and spread. Unlike Italy, which was dominated by powerful city-states and elite patrons, the Northern Renaissance involved scholars, clergy, and the middle-class readers. These developments helped lay the groundwork for the Protestant Reformation. Although Northern humanists like Erasmus did not intend to split the church, their ideas made reform unavoidable. By encouraging literacy, critical thinking, and religious debate, Northern Renaissance created the intellectual environment that allowed reformers like Martin Luther to gain support. The Northern Renaissance also differed from the Italian Renaissance in art and literature. Italian artists focused heavily on classical mythology, idolized human forms, and secular themes. Northern artists, by contrast, emphasized realism, everyday life, and religious subjects. Literature in the North also reflected a focus on reform. Thomas More's Utopia critiqued political corruption and social inequality, while Erasmus's In Praise of Folly used satire to expose church abuses. These works were widely read due to the printing press and had a lasting influence. When comparing the Italian and the Northern Renaissance, several key differences stand out. The Italian Renaissance focused on secular humanism, classical revival, and political power within the city-states. The Northern Renaissance emphasized Christian humanism, religious reform, and moral improvement. Italian thinkers such as Petrarch and Machiavelli focused on classical philosophy and politics, while the Northern figures like Erasmus and Thomas More focused on faith and ethics. Despite these differences, both movements shared important similarities. Both emphasized education and individual thought and a return to the original sources. Both were made possible by economic growth and increased literacy. Most importantly, both challenged medieval traditions and reshaped European society. In conclusion, the Northern Renaissance was not a weaker version of the Italian Renaissance. It was a distinct movement with its own goals and consequences. By combining humanist learning with Christian reform, it transformed religion, culture, and intellectual life in the Northern Europe and directly contributed to the Protestant Reformation.